Welcome everyone, I'm Breakup Brad, and I've been a breakup coach for 14 years now. And I've helped over 140,000 people like you from around the world get a second chance with their ex. Now in this two-part video, I'm gonna offer you 20 proven tips that will ensure that you do get that second shot at a new, better relationship with your ex. So if you are desperate to prevent them from slipping out of your life for good, then these 20 things that I'm about to share with you are exactly what you need in order to make sure that your ex does come back to you. Now, this is part one. So in this video, we'll cover the first 10 tips, and I'll put a link in the description to part two, where I'll discuss tips number 11 through 20. All right, let's get into it with tip number one, which is avoid exhibiting any kind of needy or desperate behavior. Yes, we're starting with a tip on what not to do because this is absolutely critical. Making a key mistake like this, letting your ex see how desperate you are to get them back, or being needy and clingy in general, can and will often torpedo your chances before you even get started. Now, I'm talking about any kind of behavior that shows your ex that you're desperate for them to take you back, that you're struggling to live without them, or that you're scared that you might not be able to find somebody new to actually replace them. Now, this is especially true if the breakup was fully your ex's idea, if you've been dumped, essentially. Because your ex is going to feel that they have all the power in that kind of situation. By deciding to end the relationship, your ex expects you to be the desperate and clingy one. So you should really be doing the opposite and make sure that you never give off any kind of air of, desperation or neediness. All right, and moving on to tip number two, which is focus only on what you can actually control. Look, I know this is probably more general advice than what you're hoping for. You want me to give you specific things that you can say to your ex that will make them come running back to you. And I promise I will give you some more practical, actionable tips like that in a second. But first, I really do need to touch on your mindset when it comes to getting your ex back. I've coached literally thousands of people from around the world who are going through a breakup and trying to get a second chance with their ex. I've been doing this for 14 years now, so I've seen countless examples of clients who spend all their time focusing on what their ex is doing, what their ex is saying, and so on. Basically, it's the natural tendency for most people is to stress and obsess over all the little things that their ex is doing and saying. And really, this is all a waste of your time and energy. You need to do your absolute best to ignore everything that's out of your control. That means that if you find out your ex, went on a date with somebody new, you need to accept that and try to let it go. Worrying about who this person is, whether there'll be a second date, that's all stuff that's out of your control. So there's no point in worrying about it or trying to find out more. Similarly, it can be tempting to replay the breakup or certain things that happen between you and your ex over and over again. You might worry, you said the wrong thing or wish you'd handled the situation differently. But again, this is a waste of time because unless you build a time machine, you just can't go back and undo the past. So it's way, way more helpful and better for your own mental health to just simply focus on the things that you can control. You can control your own behavior and your own actions moving forward. You can control how you interact with your ex, how you talk about the breakup, and how you portray yourself to your ex and everyone else in your life. So worry about those things and not the other stuff that you have no control over. Okay, let's move on to tip number three, which is always act positive around your ex. Now, this one is a lot more practical and it's way more important than most people think. So first of all, as I'll cover later in the video, you really want to upend your ex's expectations after the breakup. You want them to be at least somewhat surprised about how you handle the breakup. So giving the impression that you're moving on quickly, that you're not scared of being single or facing life without your ex around. Those are things that your ex will not be expecting, and that will cause your ex to have second thoughts about whether they might have made a mistake. Your ex expects you to be an emotional wreck right now, so being positive and upbeat around them is going to be unexpected. Even more importantly, it's been proven in numerous studies that most humans have a natural tendency to want to be around positive, happy people. Positivity is a very attractive trait, basically, and by acting upbeat, happy, and positive around your ex, you're going to be more fun to hang out with and less threatening to your ex. And this is going to make them more likely to agree to an in-person meetup and more likely to just want to be around you. Then this is honestly, it's a good tip for life in general, and especially when it comes to dating, But it definitely also has several benefits when it comes to getting a second chance with your ex. And that brings us to tip number 4, create a sense of urgency for your ex. Now, I alluded to this in the previous tips, but in a nutshell, you need to make your ex feel that they're going to lose you for good unless they change their mind about the breakup very soon. So in other words, the more you sort of hang around as a backup plan for your ex, the more they feel like they can just snap their fingers at any moment and you'll come running back, then the less pressure they'll feel to cave into their emotions and take you back. If your ex just feels that they can just, wait and see what the single life is like, if they think they can date around and try to find somebody to replace you while keeping you around as their plan B option in case things don't work out, or they don't enjoy being as single as much as they thought they would, well, that's going to allow them time to slowly adjust to life without you and for their heartache and emotions to start fading. So by showing your ex that you're not waiting around for them, that you're going to quickly move on, find somebody new, and live an interesting and exciting life without them, you're putting them under pressure to reverse the breakup quickly or risk losing you for good. And in my experience, this by itself can actually be enough to make your ex change their mind and beg you to take them back. Now, I know it might seem backward to move on and act like you're losing interest in your ex because you probably feel the complete opposite inside. But you have to put some pressure on your ex and create that sense of urgency in order to make them worry about losing you and force them to rethink the breakup. All right, now let's move on to tip number 5. Get out there and be social. Now, this ties in nicely with the previous tip because it's partly about showing to your ex that you're not a desperate loser who's sitting at home crying all day. By keeping super busy after the breakup, getting out into the world, hanging out with friends and family, picking up new hobbies, or working extra hard at your job or in school, you both keep your mind off your ex, show them you're a great catch with lots going on outside of your breakup, and give you plenty of things that you're going to be able to talk about with your ex once you do reconnect. I honestly can't stress enough how important it is to continue living your life and stay busy. No matter how tempting it is to just sit around and stare at your phone, hoping that your ex will message you, you just need to fight those urges and instead focus on being social, working on improving your own life, and just generally get out and do interesting and exciting things. All right, tip number 6 is do not send your ex gifts or love letters. Now, I hope you already know that this is a very bad idea, but for some reason, many of my clients still do this kind of thing very frequently before they begin working with me. So never send your ex any kind of gift after breaking up, even if you did something really terrible that caused your breakup or led to it. It's going to look to your ex like you're trying to bribe them or buy their love with gifts. And that obviously is a very desperate look to give off. And as we've talked about in tip number 1 already, desperation is extremely unattractive, and your ex is not going to be persuaded to take you back because you sent them a bouquet of flowers. And similarly, you also never want to send your ex a love note or letter. It might work in Hollywood movies, but I've never actually seen it work in real life. Most of the time, people who send their ex a long letter explaining, how they feel or trying to apologize for things they've done, and they just end up looking desperate and unattractive. You might have a lot of things that you want to say to your ex right now, but writing them all down and, gushing out your feelings in a long love letter is never the right way to go about it. In fact, this ties in nicely with the next tip, number 7, which is don't show your emotions. Now, I think I've already explained several reasons why you don't want your ex to see your heartache and loneliness, but I do want to stress this again because it's really important. No matter how depressed or hopeless you might be feeling right now, your ex does not need to know that. In fact, it's best if they either have no idea how you're actually feeling right now, or they think that you're doing surprisingly well in spite of the breakup. So crying, begging, apologizing over and over again, this kind of behavior is extremely unattractive, and your ex isn't likely going to be persuaded to take you back out of guilt or sympathy. So if you're going to get back together and start a new, healthy, and lasting relationship with your ex, which I assume is, of course, your goal, it needs to be their decision, and it needs to be because they feel that breaking up was a mistake and that you're a great catch. So by showing your emotions and letting your ex see how sad you are, you give off some serious low-value vibes, and you hand all of the power to your ex. And as we already talked about in tip number 4, you want your ex to see you thriving and worry that you're going to quickly move on unless they soon decide to take you back. Now, next up is arguably the most important tip on this list. Tip number 8, make your ex miss you. So for your ex to want you back, they're going to need to miss you. They're going to need to long to have you around again, to feel the love and attraction that they felt when you were still happily together, and to really understand how much worse their life is now that you're no longer a part of it. Now, it might seem really impossible to make somebody miss you. How can you control what goes on in their head? But honestly, it's actually incredibly simple. The only way to truly make somebody miss you is to disappear from their life as quickly and completely as possible. And this is precisely why, despite what you might have heard or read elsewhere, a period of no contact is so effective. I've made countless videos on no contact previously, and there are different ways to employ no contact depending on your specific situation, but it all boils down to the same thing. Your absence is what's going to make your ex miss you and wish you were still around. The more you talk to your ex, the more you see your ex and remain part of their life after breaking up, the more time you're giving them to slowly adapt and learn to live without you. You're essentially helping them to move on by weaning themselves off you gradually. So employing a period of radio silence, ideally as soon after breaking up as possible, you give yourself the best possible chance of making your ex miss you like mad. And please, if you are still skeptical about what I'm saying here, just look at some of the comments on my old no contact videos here on YouTube and see what other people are saying. There's literally dozens or even hundreds of success stories from people who doubted whether no contact would actually work, but then tried it anyways and ended up getting their ex back in no time. Now, obviously, simply ignoring your ex for a few weeks isn't always enough to make them come back to you, but honestly, it can be. You would be blown away at how many of my clients are back together with their ex just a week or two after they sign up for my coaching program and they start applying no contact. Now, if you do want to get my personal advice on how to best apply no contact for your specific situation, or if you just want to know, if it's the right strategy for your unique scenario or your ex in particular, remember, you can always sign up for a month of my one-on-one personal coaching at breakupbrad.com/coaching. To wrap this one up, I'll just say that the vast majority of people who want their ex back should be applying no contact for at least a few weeks. My default recommendation for the average breakup is roughly 30 days. But regardless of how long you apply no contact or how strictly you limit the contact with your ex, it's still going to be critical to making your ex miss you and feeling the maximum post-breakup emotions. By removing yourself from your ex's life entirely, they simply have no choice but to feel the full impact of your absence. And they are going to miss you, potentially enough to just simply cave into their emotions and ask you to get back together. Now, tip number 9 is leverage social media and mutual friends to show off the new you. So basically, what I mean here is that you can use the ways that you're still connected with your ex, on your social media and through mutual friends, to demonstrate to your ex what an exciting and successful life that you have been living since the breakup. You can post, pictures of you doing fun, interesting stuff to your Instagram stories. You can post photos of you hanging out with members of the opposite sex. You could just show your ex what they're missing out on now that you're no longer together. Now, don't overdo this or make it look unnatural, but also don't be afraid to use social media or gossip through mutual friends to convey subtle messages to your ex that show, how quickly you're moving on, how little you need your ex to be happy and successful, and just to, upend their expectations in general. Obviously, this is unlikely to make them come back to you by itself, but it can definitely be helpful in shifting how your ex feels about you and create that sense of urgency that we discussed earlier. That actually ties perfectly into tip number 10, which is carefully use jealousy to your advantage. Most people, even if they don't admit it or show it, outwardly, are jealous by nature. Even after you're breaking up, your ex is very likely to become jealous if they learn that you've started dating again, or even if they see you hanging out with new friends or attractive people of the opposite sex. They can't help but feel like they're losing out on something by seeing you with somebody else, or even seeing you just out having fun and enjoying life without them. Now, in my Best-Selling X Factor program, I have a whole section dedicated to what I call covert jealousy. Basically, ways to subtly use jealousy to your advantage. Now, I call it covert jealousy because this tactic can be extremely dangerous if you use it incorrectly. You really need to be extremely subtle about this and not let your ex think that you're doing anything to intentionally make them jealous. But if you can do this properly and use the techniques that I outline in the program to avoid setting off your ex's alarm bells, then even a little bit of jealousy can really make your ex second guess the breakup and worry that you're moving on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for part 1 of this video series. Part 2 will probably already be published here on my channel by the time you're watching this. And I have put a link below in the description to that video where I go through the remaining tips, numbers 11 through 20. So be sure to check that out right now, as some of the most important stuff I've included in that part 2 video. Thanks a ton for watching. Thanks for subscribing and sharing your comments and questions in the comments below. And I will see you in part 2.